Chris Mack I know is funny, laid back. Like, I don't know. I've never had a hard conversation with Chris Mack.
Right.
And, the Chris Mack I see is, we'd be standing at baggage claim in Las Vegas, and he's got his kids with him. Like, he was like one of the few coaches who would bring his kids on recruiting trips. And I don't like, I think he values family a lot. And, if you reach a point where your job's, this probably goes for everybody. If you reach a point where your job's not fun and you have the money to not do that job anymore, probably best to not do that job anymore. And so I do think his children are at an age where these are real, never get them back years. And I think he's going to enjoy focusing on that. And I don't know that he's real anxious to get back in. I would put it at less than 50% that he's coaching college basketball next season.
I'd put it at 90% plus he's not coaching in college basketball next season. That's my read. I did a YouTube. If anyone's watching now or listening to the podcast and was unaware, if you're not already subscribed to the YouTube, by the way, if you're watching, please smash the like button, get those likes up. We appreciate you. I did a YouTube only 15-minute video after it became official on, was that Wednesday? It must have been. And so I went through some of my names, but GP, I want to hear yours. So I already did mine. Like, if you want to go watch, go find it on the YouTube channel. You can watch it. A little 15-minute reaction in real time while GP was on set and preparing for that night on CBS Sports Network. So now this is your time. Your floor is yours. Just a few names to you that you think would either, make sense. Just a couple more as we get ready to move into February, and clearly understanding that, with the possible exception of, I would think you're going to mention Kenny Payne. If Kenny Payne were to leave the New York Knicks mid-season and Louisville wanted to do that in season, not that he would join and start coaching in season, but make the move on that. Every other sitting head coach, obviously, or candidate is not going to, that decision's not being made until March. So who are a few of your guys who you think make the most sense for Louisville to both make a phone call to and could be realistic and maybe landing to be the successor with Chris Mack?
Well, let's just bounce through some names. And these aren't necessarily my names, but they're names that are getting thrown out there a lot. Let's start with Bruce Pearl, because that name has been out there. There's reports that he's interested in the job. And then there's reports that Louisville wouldn't even be interested in him.
Yes. And I'm reporting that, by the way, that I've reported and I followed it up. Sorry to interrupt you, but I said it on that video on YouTube. And then there was some report that Louisville might be interested. I followed up again. And literally the source said, I have it on a text. Give me 1 second. I'm going to read you the text word for word from the source. 0 chance Louisville has reached out to anyone right now. Anyway, and that's a pretty good source.
Yeah. And by the way, you can interrupt me whenever you want. You're like 3,000 interruptions behind me at this point.
I know, but whatever. You're rolling. Go ahead.
With Bruce, I think the reality is ultimately going to be Louisville not comfortable hiring him because of past NCAA issues, and it has a IARP case hanging above its head. I think the truth is ultimately going to be Louisville doesn't like. Do the people at Louisville understand that in a vacuum, Bruce Pearl would probably be amazing at Louisville? Sure, I'm sure they understand that. Can they hire him? Probably not. And I think ultimately where we're going to get is Louisville was never going to hire Bruce Pearl. And how about this? And Bruce Pearl was never going to take Louisville. But he'll use it to get, as he should, everything he wants and more at Auburn. And that is, at some point in the next 6 months, Bruce Pearl, maybe even the next 2 months, Bruce Pearl will sign a contract extension with Auburn. Because, if you are unemployed and you take the Auburn job and the Louisville job and you put them on a table, exact same contracts, which job you want, basically everybody would take the Louisville job. The Louisville job is clearly better than the Auburn job. But once you've already built Auburn into what Auburn is, I don't know why you would leave Auburn for Louisville, especially under these circumstances. Like when Bruce got the Auburn job, he had some big questions about it. I mean, he took it because he believed in himself and believed he could get it done. But I went to visit him at Auburn a few months after he got the job. And I just remember him wondering, like, we'll see. This is hard. Not a lot of history here. This is going to be, he said, this will be harder to get to a good place than it was for me to get Tennessee to a good place. The questions are, can you recruit here? Can you recruit? You're in a league with Kentucky. You're in a league with some heavy hitters. Can you recruit here? That was a question he had. Can you win here? If you can't win here, can you make people care here? All these questions existed once upon a time. Those questions don't exist anymore. Can you recruit here? Yeah. You got 2 McDonald's All-Americans starting in your front court. You might have the number 1 pick in the draft. You can recruit at Auburn. You've got the Atlanta recruiting base an hour and a half away. Okay, but can you win here? Well, sure. You've been to the 2019 Final Four. You're ranked number 1 in the country right now. Okay, but if you win here, can you make people care here? Dude, I was there last week. They care. Every game, sold out. Place as good as it gets. So when you've got all of that stuff, and Auburn can pay you whatever you need, they can give you all the private planes you want. They're about to build a new practice facility. I just don't know why you would leave that for Louisville under these circumstances. So I think ultimately, like, the list starts below Bruce Pearl for reasons that both sides have. After that, honestly, I would pick up the phone and call Mick Cronin just to see if he wants, like, hey, do you hate sunshine and 72 every day? I'm not saying
you would do it. I'm just, again, if you didn't watch the video, it's not happening. But yes, I know you got to say it, but I'm just
running through the names that have been tossed out there. I would at least see, like, hey, what if this UCLA season spiraled and they lose to Abilene Christian in the opening round of the NCAA tournament? I'd at least pick up the phone, and then he would tell me, I'm not leaving Southern California. And you'd say, okay, just wanted to check. I would pick up the phone and call Chris Holtmann, see if he wants to come back to his home state. He'd probably tell me he doesn't, but I would at least make that phone call. So I think you're going to see some big names like that, and they'll pass quietly. And then Louisville ends up with, I'm going to give you 3 names right now, and I'm going to say one of these people is going to be the next Louisville coach. Andy Enfield, Kevin Willard, Kenny Payne.
Kenny Payne most likely. Don't see Andy Enfield. Give me. Here's my top 3. Give me Kenny Payne 1, Steve Forbes 2, Chris Holtmann 3. That's my top 3.
Could you get Holtmann to seriously consider it?
I don't know if you could get him to seriously consider it. You'd have to really pay him a ton. I know his buyout is not a lot. That's why I say, like, I think Chris Holtmann's buyout right now is less than $2 million. I don't know if he's leaving Ohio State to go to Louisville. He actually grew up in Lexington,
right?
And his name has been there. And, you know, a relatively big group of guys like, okay, if Calipari retires 5 years from now, who might make sense? And Chris Holtmann's in that group with the likes of, like, you know, maybe a Mark Pope and whatever the hot coach should be. Kentucky, you know, swings big. Maybe Brad Stevens is done with the NBA, which won't be the case. But regardless, I don't know if he'd do it, to be honest. Ohio State has plenty going for it, but it also isn't a basketball first school. But Kenny Payne played there, knows the area, has recruited to Kentucky, obviously. He is my favorite right now. And then I just don't know why you don't take a serious look at Steve Forbes, because, and I said this on the YouTube video as well, I had someone tell me that Steve Forbes is about as close as you can get in terms of personality and handling the pressure to Bruce Pearl as any coach out there right now. And like Steve Forbes, like, you know, he's hopping on a damn motorcycle to promote Wake Forest home games. Like, he's just built for it. And he has flipped a Wake Forest irrelevant program into a team that is going to be in contention for the top 3 of the ACC and probably going to make the NCAA tournament. I'm not saying he's going, I'm not saying he wants to go. Haven't, you know, talked on or off record with Forbes about any of this stuff, but I'm just saying, like, you look across in the league and see what he's been able to do. I think it makes some sense there. But Kenny Payne would be my guess as of today is Kenny Payne. A lot of people going to push for Kenny Payne to get that job, and I think Kenny Payne would want that.
Well, this is what somebody in the industry told me, is that, you know, Louisville doesn't have a full-time president right now, doesn't have a full-time athletic director right now, and that could leave a void where former players, alums, have a big voice that can influence. Yes. And if that's the case, it could lead to Kenny Payne actually getting the job. I agree with you, by the way. I would take a serious look at Steve Forbes as well. And I think Forbes is closer, and I'm not speaking for anybody. I'm just strictly looking at the job. Wake Forest is a hard job. That's one that seems gettable to me. Kevin Willard seems gettable to me. Kenny Payne obviously gettable, and I think Andy Enfield maybe more
I just feel like Enfield's got more buzz from Maryland right now.
Yeah,
he's from that area. I'm not saying that he's going to Maryland or he's the final. If Andy Enfield leaves, I see Maryland more likely. Like Andy Enfield's like there's a lot that comes with the Louisville job. I'd say there's even more that comes with the Louisville job than the Maryland job, and I don't know if Andy Enfield is like a really good fit for Louisville. But I don't know. By the way, USC lost. Not that this matters whatsoever, but just as a note, USC lost at home and was swept by Stanford this season. Didn't see that coming. Late night West Coast result there. Trojans dropped one against.
And Andy Enfield and Kevin Willard both 0-1 since the Louisville job opened.